Hello and welcome to day one of Global Azure 2022. I am really excited to do my first actually of 5 sessions today on behalf of Global Azure, as well as the user group that I co-organize, Give Me Cloud Talks. And this first one to kick things off is Path to Cloud Security Certifications. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Dwayne Natwick. I am a senior product manager at CloudReach. I'm also an Azure MVP. I handle migrations and security and do a lot of talks on that, as well as do training as a Microsoft certified trainer and a regional lead. I've also authored two security books, the Identity Administrator guide for Microsoft, the SC300 exam guide, as well as which is available on Amazon right now. And if you stick around, there will be some information about how to purchase, as well as a giveaway for this book. I am also have also authored the SC900 for Pact Publishing, which is due for release in June of 2022, and have recently started the SC100 Cybersecurity Architect expert exam guide, which we'll get into here as we go through the path to security certifications. If you want to follow me on social media, hopefully you already are, and maybe watching these live streams on either Twitter or LinkedIn. We're also on YouTube. Please feel free to follow me, reach out if you have any questions about these certifications. And feel free to comment or chat in the comment section during the live stream, and I'll leave some time at the end to answer those questions. So let's talk about what your path is to security certification. I'm going to talk briefly about some things, or just some generalities around security at first. I'm not going to get too deep into that. Because I have some other talks around those areas later on today. But then we're going to talk about the different security certifications. And you can see those listed, but we'll go through those and talk about each of the objective areas of those as we go through this talk. So let's talk what is, around planning and securing your environment. What do we need to worry about? There's different types of threats and different solutions to those threats within the Microsoft ecosystem and the Microsoft infrastructure, whether it's Microsoft 365 or SharePoint or Exchange Online or Azure. We all want to protect against varying threats, both internal and external. And there's a list of some of those on here. Most of you, if you are involved in security or development or infrastructure administration, you generally know, we generally know about these threats, and we generally try to take the steps to decrease our vulnerability to these threats. One that I have on here, don't have on here, that I should probably add, is also ransomware. That's always in the news around getting our data stolen. So, and keys to protecting ourselves against those threats is building a strong security posture. And when we're talking about that, the next slide will go into how that works within cloud environments. But if you got your own on-premises data center, we're looking at physical security, identity and access, perimeter security, network security, compute, applications, and data, and all of those are areas in which we need to take into account what we're protecting against within our environment. And when we're talking about the cloud environment, we have the physical security actually is taken care of in the Microsoft world. If we're using Azure or Microsoft 365, that is Microsoft's responsibility. So we really need to focus on these other 6 layers in building out our security posture, and we need to make sure that we know where our responsibility lies within the cloud. And this is one of the key pieces here to note when you're talking about security, or you're even talking about just cloud administration and management, is the shared responsibility. And it's a little bit different when it comes to security versus administration, mainly because in platform and software as a service, we have some of these gray areas that are maybe a little bit more our responsibility in administration, but there's some shared responsibility between us and Microsoft. because Microsoft puts certain controls in place to protect identities, protect applications, protect networks, but it's our responsibility to take that a step further for our based on our requirements. So let's and last piece here, kind of in that overview piece, is zero trust. And key thing, and this is really a big buzzword, and I'm actually doing a couple of conversations here today around authentication and zero trust. First one coming up in a couple of hours, which is specific around zero trust models around identity. But zero trust has multiple pillars. It's devices, it's networking, it's our applications, it's all of that defense in depth that we had in that that previous defense in depth slide, and putting zero trust in each of those layers, and assuming that a breach is going to happen, and verify that somebody that's trying to access those resources in any of those areas are really the person that is who they say they are, and that they have proper authorization for that. And this is really kind of like the zero trust kind of workflow for identity. And if you're familiar with conditional access policies, it's very the conditional access policy works in a almost identical way in terms of how it verifies and enforces zero trust within identity and access management. So let's talk about building your path and what that path really looks like for security within Microsoft. Which Microsoft, when they talk about security, these are a couple of legacy exams for Microsoft 365 and Azure, but also the SC exams, which are the security, compliance, and identity exams. And because Microsoft uses that 2 alpha designation, the I's not there, it's dropped. But that's what we're really talking about, is security, compliance, and identity. And all of these exams touch on all 3 of those areas throughout. So what is the path to Microsoft security certification? And I kind of, the way that I discuss it is, it's kind of a choose your own adventure kind of path. I always recommend starting with a fundamentals certification, and really before you really get into the Microsoft certificate, or the security, compliance, and identity certifications, you should probably go through the MS 900 for Microsoft 365, or the AZ 900 for Azure fundamentals, just because that gives, if you're new to the cloud, it gives you some foundational knowledge around cloud concepts and things like that we really jump right into with the SCI, the SC 900 exam for fundamentals. It assumes that you know cloud concepts and know what cloud is, what infrastructure, platform, and software as a service is, what that shared responsibility model is. And then it kind of takes that a step further and goes into the solutions and the capabilities within for our required security, compliance, and identity capabilities. Great thing about the SCI fundamentals exam is it is the first exam really that took the whole breadth of Microsoft 365 and Azure and combined it. You go through that, it talks about security in Azure and Microsoft 365, compliance in Azure and Microsoft 365, and then identity, which for both of them, it begins and ends with Azure Active Directory. So we have those capabilities there. And then once you go through the SCI fundamentals, that's where you kind of determine then, okay, where is my area of interest? I've learned the foundational knowledge, the overview of Azure, the overview of Microsoft 365. Where do I want to go from here? Am I going to go down a Microsoft 365 path? Am I going to go down an Azure path? And the next step within that I recommend is one of the 500 exams, whether it's the MS 500 for Security Administrator or the AZ 500 for Azure Security Engineer. Those then take what you learned in SCI fundamentals and expands that for the specific technology, which is, and again, it's very broad. It goes through all of everything from security, compliance, and identity for Microsoft 365 or for Azure, respectively. and then then you can really get into specializing. If you want to just specialize, you certainly are welcome to jump ahead and skip that 500 level. But this is really, as I'm going through the journey, this is really where it really kind of starts to reinforce your knowledge, and gives you the ability, as you specialize. What the 500 exams really do is if you're specializing in one area, you can at least talk to those people in roles in other areas. If you're an identity and access administrator, you can talk to somebody in information protection and understand some of the solutions that they're utilizing as well. So that's where I kind of recommend that you kind of build your knowledge. Take it at a very high level with fundamentals. You take it a step further, again with very broad exams of the 500 exams, and then we get into the specialty exams that are those SC exams, the SC 400, 300, and 200, and then the expert exam, which we'll talk about here in a moment as well. The SC 400 is very Microsoft 365 specific, so that's why I have it drawing a line between the MS 500. It focuses on the information protection and compliance within Microsoft 365 Defender, essentially, in the Security Center and the Compliance Center within Microsoft 365. No real details with the Azure area. Now that might change with the recent Microsoft Purview changes. Purview has not come into this exam because it's been as Azure Purview a beta, and Microsoft generally does not have test questions on beta services and solutions. So there are updates to a lot of these SC exams coming up in the May-June 2022 timeframe. So you may see some of that come in. But for the most part, it is very focused on Microsoft 365. And even if it does have Microsoft Purview for Azure Storage and SQL Database within that, those are still solutions that are within the Microsoft 365 area. So you really it's more just knowing the terminology and knowing that those are Azure services as well. Down at the bottom here is the SC300, which is the Identity and Access Administrator. It's focused on, and we'll talk more about each one of these in detail, but you can see that the line for MS500 points to that as well, because you get a good foundational knowledge of Azure AD, Azure Active Directory, in both MS500 and AZ500. So if you want to be Identity and Access Administrator, you can certainly take that path from either the Microsoft 365 or the Azure route. Same thing with the SC200. It focuses on the entire Defender series, as well as Microsoft Sentinel. So that's Defender 365 within the Microsoft 365 umbrella, and then also Microsoft Defender for Cloud. So again, that kind of brings together both paths. If you want to get into security operations, you should have a good knowledge, and especially knowledge around Microsoft 365 Defender and Microsoft Defender for Cloud. Then obviously you can then move to that expert level, and we'll talk more about that on the next slide. So the security architect to expert path here, as we choose our path and we go down our road, as I spoke about on the first slide, we want, obviously, everybody probably wants to get that expert badge, that 3-star badge. You want to do it for the Azure architect, you want to do it for the Microsoft 365 administrator expert, the DevOps expert. Everybody wants that expert badge, and this is a new path that Microsoft has as of May 2022. This exam is in beta, so it's still possible, still a couple of months potentially away from being generally available for and people getting badges for it. But a great exam all the same. If you feel like taking the beta, you probably still sign up for the beta. I'm not sure if they've hit the criteria of 300 people taking that exam, or if they're going to extend that. They have extended on some of the more popular exams in the past, but the SC 100 exam, we'll talk more about the actual exam here in a moment, is the exam that is the route to the expert. Now, to get to that route, very similarly to the to say the developer exam, where you can take either the AZ 104 or the AZ 204 with the AZ 400 to get your expert badge, or with the uh, Microsoft 365 administrator expert. There are multiple exams. The MS 500, the SC 300 are both in that. The having the modern desktop associate is in there. I think the having the exchange or messaging associate is in that. They're prerequisite exams or badges that you need to have before you get that combines with the new exam to get your expert badge. And for the security, the cybersecurity architect expert exam, it's any one of these four. So if you are specializing in security operations, you take the SC 200 and pass, you can then take the SC 100 and get your badge. The SC 900 is not a requirement or prerequisite. I just put this on every one of my slides when I'm talking about any kind of exam or certification path. You should take the fundamentals path first and get yourself familiar. If you're new to Microsoft exams, it gets you familiar with those exams and get you to move forward from that standpoint. So let's talk about the paths and some of the goals, and talk about each one of these exams a little bit more thoroughly within this conversation. And really, like I said, path depends on your goals. Whether you're modern workplace or Microsoft 365, you're Azure, or you're going to specialize in identity and access or information protection or security operations. Keep in mind one thing to point out with the information protection. Note that SC 400 is not noted here as one of the prereqs for the SC 100, or the cybersecurity architect expert badge. That's, I think, probably by choice within Microsoft, because, like I said, that's a very Microsoft 365 specific exam. Being a cybersecurity architect, you need to have a broad breadth of security solutions, and these all do cover a broad breadth of security, where information protection is very focused in one area. And the MS 500 does give you a foundational knowledge, and even below that, an advanced level of knowledge on information protection anyway. So let's talk about each of these exams and the objective topics as we go through. So SC 900 objective areas, and when we talk about objective areas, these are the number of questions you could possibly expect if you're thinking about a 100 question exam, and you see 5 to 10% or 25 to 30, you can kind of figure out how many questions. Generally, most exams within Microsoft are a weighted scale. You have to get 700 to pass out of a possible 1,000, and they are usually somewhere in the 30 to 60 question range. 60 being extremely high, and maybe something you only see a lot of times on a beta exam. Most of the exams give you about 3 hours. I think 180 minutes. Some 220. The fundamentals exams give you 90 minutes, and they're very straightforward, multiple choice, true, not necessarily true, false, but yes, no type questions. No real case study questions. That's what you get in those associate and expert levels. So they can be taken a lot quicker. Like I said, take the fundamentals exam first, and you kind of get a feel and an idea around test taking within Microsoft. They're less expensive exams than the associate and expert level exams as well. And you can see, we very structured around the objective areas, where we have, concepts at 5 to 10%. And this is very similar to, even if you look at the MS 900 and the AZ 900, there's a concept section around that that's only about 10%, but knowing those concepts help you answer some of the other questions in the others. So there's kind of a blended weight around most of these. Then we get into identity, we get into security, we get into compliance, the three components of SC and I, just in the ISC order in here, because you need to really start with identity. That's that first layer after physical in a defense in depth strategy. And it's really, really Azure Active Directory is where things protection begins and ends in a cloud environment. And you can see here, I just kind of taken each one of these areas and kind of focused on where in the defense in depth security posture does each of these fall, each of these exams fall. This definitely falls across every area here except for the physical, because and it touches the physical a little bit, but the SC 900 does not get a whole lot into hybrid identity and hybrid architectures. So to speak, it's a light mention more so than anything. So really everything cloud related, all the way from identity and access to data, is really covered at a describe and understand level. So MS 500, if you're taking the Microsoft 365 path, this is the security administrator, and this again, this one's a little bit more evenly spread. Information protection, you can see, is only 15 to 20%. That's because there is an information protection associate exam. So they've taken some of that content out of the MS 500 and put it into the SC 400. And we'll talk about that here in a moment. You can see, again, identity and access is huge. Threat protection, governance, and compliance. So we've got identity, we've got threat protection, which is security, same thing with information protection. And then we've got governance and compliance, which is that C in the SCI. So these are still security, compliance, and IDM, but it's really implementing and managing and administering security and compliance and identity at a very broad scale, but at a more advanced practitioner level than the fundamentals, which is more just just base knowledge. And you can see here, not a lot of perimeter and network security that goes into the MS 500, because it's a Microsoft 365 exam and it's a SaaS-based solution, and Microsoft takes care of that, securing the perimeter and securing access. And from a network perspective, we don't have the ability to touch that for Microsoft 365 solutions. The AZ 500, now if you're taking the Azure path, the security engineer associate, again, identity and access is big. Platform protection, not as big as maybe it should be, and probably might in years to come become a higher weighted percentage. But we've got security operations and securing data and applications as well. So again, platform protection a little bit is around network, has a little bit of the network security and perimeter security, and Microsoft has put in an AZ 700 network engineer associate exam as well, that kind of takes away a little bit of that within the AZ 500. Building your security posture here. This does cover really around Azure all of the areas of defense in depth in one way or another, because we are going all the way from application, all the way through the compute and security and all of those with a very broad focus. And we have responsibilities, whether we're using infrastructure or platform as a service within Azure. We need to secure our perimeter. We need to secure our network. Even though to a certain degree, some of that is done as part of the physical security that Microsoft takes responsibility for. And here are some of those ways that we do that, with role-based access control, our firewall and port rules, setting up different virtual networks and encryption and classification, our APIs, our OS hardening. All of those things are ways that we need to build that security posture as part of the AZ 500. Skip through that previous slide. Security and compliance, network, reviewing and monitoring is a key component around security and compliance. Again, I'll be talking more about that later on today when I talk about Microsoft Defender for Cloud. So I'm going to skip over that a little bit for sake of time. SC 300 is the Identity and Access Administrator exam, near and dear to my heart. Like I said, wrote the exam guide for it, and we'll have some opportunities for you to win an exam guide or some promotional codes for discounts if you want to buy the exam guide as well. Very very broad, broad, evenly focused on identity management, authentication and access, and identity governance, and then a smaller weighting on the access management for apps. There's a level, and I was involved a little bit in the objective area and job task analysis for what adjustments needed to be made now that this exam's a year old. And the conversation around access management for apps was interesting because there's a level of identity and access administration that you need to take into understanding and building around, but there's a line that you really need to draw between identity and access administrator and app development, and that's really kind of why this is weighted a little bit lower, is because a lot of access management for apps is really in the app development rather than the identity and access administration. So, but there are things that you need to understand in terms of registering applications or even third-party SaaS applications like Salesforce or Workday or GitHub, and utilizing Azure Active Directory for those. That's all within this exam, as well as a little bit around cloud Defender for cloud apps as well. Formerly Cloud App Security, is a little bit more in the updates to this exam than it was previously. And you can see this is strictly in security posture, the identity and access level, which again is our perimeter in a cloud environment. The first level of defense that we have a level of control over how people get in and out of our organization and our tenant. And role-based access control, multi-factor authentication, conditional access, privileged identity management are all those identity management solutions that we talk about within that particular exam, as well as zero trust. Here's that slide again that I showed earlier. Again, we're going to be talking in a couple hours on zero trust, so we won't get into that now. This is more around the basis of the exams and what they are. So the SC 400 Information Protection Administrator Associate, again, really great exam if you are in data protection and you want to put solutions in place that govern and manage compliance. This really focuses in the Defender 365 area, in the security and compliance portals, and understanding those very deeply. And you can see another fairly equal spread, with information protection being a little bit higher weighted, but again, great exam from that standpoint, to be able to really deeply dive into information protection and governance, and avoiding data loss and data leakage, doing different, running simulations and those type of things all go into the SC 400 exam. And this is really, like I said, really around defense in depth, is that data area of your security posture. It doesn't really get into any of these other areas of perimeter security. This is really laser focused on data and information protection, and making sure that from an access and availability standpoint, we are enforcing principles of least privilege and securing against unauthorized access. So understanding Azure AD to a certain degree is helpful, but really this is again around the security and compliance portals within Microsoft 365. And maintaining that integrity, that zero trust, again, comes in very strongly within the SC 400 exam. The last of the associate level exams for the security, compliance, and identity track is the SC 200. And again, this one's if you really want to get into threat response threat hunting, really finding where bad actors are and where anomalous behavior is taking place. This is the exam for you, and this is the SC200 Microsoft Security Operations Analyst. You want to be be part of a blue team or a red team on in cybersecurity. Here you go. Mitigating threats using and again Microsoft 365 Defender, Defender for Cloud. Forgot to change the naming here in these two objective areas, but we're mitigating threats with Microsoft Defender for Cloud and Microsoft Sentinel. So those are the three areas there: the Defender and Sentinel, the two Defender within Azure and Microsoft 365, and then Sentinel, which goes across both. You can see here Microsoft Sentinel is huge in here because Microsoft Defender for Cloud is touched upon to a degree in the AZ 500, and Microsoft 365 Defender is touched upon, is discussed in somewhat depth in the MS 500, as well as in the SC 400 a bit as well. So these are about 50% of the exam, and then the other 50% really is Microsoft Sentinel. Really, the first exam that really gets deep into Microsoft Sentinel. It's in the AZ 500 a bit. I believe it's been added into the MS 500 a little bit as well, but really more high level, does not get really deep. This gets deep into threat hunting, running KQL queries to hunt and find anomalies and things like that. So gets really into compute applications and data for the most part, as well as Microsoft Sentinel is the capability for collecting data and detecting and investigating and responding. It is a SIM and a SOAR, so it's an event management system as well as an orchestrated response system in the cloud. So that's what Microsoft Sentinel does, and it pulls information from all different data sources, including Microsoft 365 and Microsoft Defender for Cloud, to bring, as well as AWS, Google, third-party controls that might be on premises in your data center. All of those go into this solution, this cloud-based solution, and ingests data and allows you then to work with that data. The Microsoft Security Operations Analyst exam, and I have an error here in my slides, which I will correct by doing something else here. Hold on one second. Let me find this exam here so that I can go through this, because I do have an error. So the objective topics with the SC100 exam are, and let me zoom this in a little bit here for everybody, are designing zero trust and designing a zero trust strategy and architecture, evaluating governance, risk, and compliance, designing a security infrastructure, designing a strategy for data and applications. You can see pretty evenly spread. The zero trust strategy and architecture has a little bit higher, just because this is really foundational to the other three objective areas. This is this really focuses a lot on the Microsoft MCRA, the cybersecurity architecture, and zero trust. And again, you can see design and evaluate. This is not a administer. This is not a integrate. This is not a implement. This is not a do exam. This is a designing and evaluating and providing guidance to administrators on how to handle security, compliance, and identity threats and vulnerabilities within our environment. And that's really what this one is focusing on. And again, get this along with one of those prerequisites of SC 300, SC 200, MS 500, or AZ 500. We then pass this exam, and you get yourself a nice cybersecurity architect expert badge. And you can see, very easy to browse certifications in here and find the certifications that you want. If you're looking for the SC exams, you can go in to Microsoft Learn and do SC, and then you can see all of the exams pop up, as well as the certifications that go along with them. You can go into any one of these. I won't go into SC 100 because I know it's not there. If I go into SC 400 and scroll down, it shows you the on-demand learn content that you can go through. I don't recommend just doing this for an associate or an expert level exam. I recommend that you take an on-demand class or an instructor-led course, as well as certainly familiarize yourself through Microsoft Learn, as well as get hands-on. You've got to get hands-on for these associate and expert level exams. You got to know the technology and how you implement the technology for the associate level exams. Those are all implementation based, so understanding the steps to implement are very important, and even understanding the steps to implement are important for the cybersecurity architect exam, because you need to know how it's implemented and how it's used for you to be able to design and architect it as well. So those are some things to think about also in that area. So we were talking in Microsoft Learn as far as a demo. Since I'm already in here, again, we go into Microsoft Learn. We can go to start, and then we start our paths. And and they have gamification built into here. You can see you get 700 XP points for going through this module. Generally gives you a amount of time it's going to take you, so you can kind of plan your path and decide what you're going to do. And then you start to build badges within your environment. I'm not signed in, but I have a number of badges. You get points. Sometimes Microsoft will run skills challenges for the public, as well as for other with partners as well, to kind of gamify it even more with a leaderboard, and you're maybe some award, some swag that comes along with winning or being in the top 5 and things like that. Makes it really fun. Microsoft Learn is become a very strong platform around Microsoft, and very strong platform around training. So I recommend first and foremost to go to Microsoft Learn. Always a good way to go. So let's wrap things up here. Starting with fundamentals again. Start with the fundamentals. Don't pass up on that one. Then once you take the fundamentals, you get an idea and get a direction to pick your path and where you're going to go from there. Are you going to go down the Azure route, the modern workplace route for Microsoft 365, or any of those specialty level certifications, associate level certifications, and then you can go to that expert level as well. And then pick your study method. Like I said, start with Microsoft Learn. You can generally get a free month with Azure with 100 credits. That's generally a plenty for practicing and getting some hands-on around the security certifications, as well as a trial account for 30 days for Microsoft 365. I recommend instructor-led training. If you work for a partner, there are cert week days, certification weeks that they offer. Cloud weeks, and with different tracks that you can utilize, and the SC tracks can be recommended. Recommend them to your partner alliance manager with Microsoft, and they can do that. There's a lot of on-demand training out there. Be careful who's providing that training, because some of that training is not provided by Microsoft certified trainers, which might be, you might not, you get what you pay for at that point. Look for on-demand training provided by Microsoft certified trainers. I have some of those out there on some different platforms, as well as many others, like on LinkedIn Learning or EC Council, or A Cloud Guru or Pluralsight. Those are all great platforms for on-demand training. I do see a question popped up in the comments. Is it enough to go through Microsoft Learn for the security exams? My opinion is no, unless except for the fundamentals exams. Fundamentals exams, you could go through because it's all describe, it's all definition. You could go through the Microsoft Learn content and pass the exam. If you, like I said, associate and expert level exams, you should have some, even if you don't take instructor led or on demand training, purchase that. I would recommend going through the Microsoft Learn content. And as you're going through that content, have a trial license for Azure or Microsoft 365 where you can use those subscriptions to get into the areas and kind of play around. Some of the Learn content has exercises that get you into the platform. I don't think there's necessarily any for Microsoft 365. I think those are more walkthroughs. But for Azure, some of those paths get you into a sandbox where you can go through exercise steps. But you need hands-on for the associate and the expert level exams. You've got to get your hands dirty. You got to get in there and play around and get a level of understanding stepping through certain steps, because you might get some questions on that exam of what are the steps in order. And if you haven't gotten in there to do it, it's hard just to remember those by memorization. But very, very good question. So let's summarize. We've talked about planning your environment and defense in depth and zero trust at a high level. Again, like I said, I'm going to have talks around both of those topics later on today in about an hour and a half. I'm talking about zero trust with identity, and later on today I will have Defender. I'll be doing a Defender for Cloud conversation as well. So keep that in mind. Feel free. Hopefully you'll keep track on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter for the upcoming other live sessions. But went through all of the security exams. You can see on this slide there is a wealth of security, compliance, and identity exams and paths that you can take. Microsoft has built in terms of the other hyperscalers. The other hyperscalers have maybe one test around security on their platforms. Microsoft has now 7 exams that are security based. So a great path to learn, just really even learning cloud security. Even if you do work in AWS and Google, you can translate some of those solutions and some of the capabilities around, specifically around like Azure, into AWS, and a little bit into Google Cloud as well. You can translate those. Not so much when you're talking about Microsoft 365. It being a SaaS-based platform has a lot of its own unique capabilities that you can do that doesn't translate to, say, Google Suite. But there, again, understanding cloud security and understanding what you have to do and the concepts translate for any cloud provider. So as I said, a special offer here. Go to this link, and what I need to do here is let me find my slideshow and get this up here for everybody. I'm going to put this in the chat for everyone that is attending, and go to that link, use that promotional code, and you'll get 25% off of my book. And where is my book here? Here is my book, Identity and Access Administrator Exam Guide, available now. And for those of you that have commented, we'll do a drawing as well for a single copy, signed copy that I will reach out. Hopefully, I can find you on LinkedIn and message you for your free copy. I'll be doing this. This is available throughout the day, throughout this week, to get the discount, as well as the with the code, and then I'll reach out to the winners probably after this day is over. Within the next day or two, I'll get the winners for all 5 of my sessions and reach out to you. I did have another question here of will any of those be available after the event? I'm assuming you're talking about any of my sessions, whether they'll be available after the event. Yes, you should be able to find in my profile, probably on LinkedIn and Twitter, the live recording, as well as it will be on my YouTube channel. So if you want to go to the Captain Hyperscaler YouTube channel, you should be able to find these videos. The recording should pop up there within the next few hours after the live event is over. So you can certainly go back and review the event. As you go down your certification path, you can go from there. Yes. So yes, talks will be available later. They're being recorded through my streaming service. So another thing to bring up is some things that are coming up with Give Me Cloud Talks. I'm doing this on behalf of our of GiveMeCloudTalks.com, the user group that I co-organize. We have multiple organizers that help with Give Me Cloud Talks. Go to GiveMeCloudTalks.com. There's also a call for speakers if you're interested in being a collaborator on one of our future talks. Myself, we're doing, this is kind of our kickoff of Give Me Cloud Talks. We kind of reconfigured the Microsoft, the Midwest Azure user group to be more of an informal cloud talk user group. And so we'll do that. Azure Back to School is an annual event that I do every September. Call for speakers is available on that. So if you go to azurebacktoschool.com, you can get the sessionized call to speakers on that. Sci-Fi DevCon, which is something that one of my co-organizers and fellow MVPs, Brian Gorman, is putting on this month as a fun, like May the 4th be with you event. It's all sci-fi based presentations and sessions. I'm doing 2 next week, but this is running throughout the month with content every day. So go to sci-fi-devcon.com and you can access what's new online today, as well as what's been online the first 4 days of the month. Shannon Keene, with a program manager for Microsoft Identity and Access Governance, has been doing a video series with fellow MVP Shabazz Dar on his YouTube channel, I Am IT Geek. So if you just go to YouTube and put in I Am IT Geek, you should be able to find Shabazz's YouTube channel, and they've been doing joint talks together for I think they're on the 3rd or 4th session. Nick Collier and Brett Bosick are 2 other co-organizers, and they also run Skylines Academy, which is an on-demand platform for training. And they do have some on-demand. They've been working hard to do some updates on their courses for based on changes that Microsoft has done first quarter of 2022, and they are working hard to get those up to date. There is some security on there. I helped collaborate with the AZ500 a few years ago. So if you're looking at the AZ500, I know that's there. There's some administrator, there's DevOps. Any path that you're looking for is there as well. So thanks everybody for your time today. Again, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or Twitter. I also have my own blog site at captainhyperscaler.com. So feel free to take a look. I generally post a lot on security, as well as a security community that I am a community manager for PACT. So you're welcome to look at that. And if you're interested in cybersecurity, certainly join. I'm going to go back a couple slides and put it on the special offer here as we close out. But thank you everybody that attended live, and thank you everybody that's watching this on a recording. Great day. I've been involved in Global Azure for a few years now, doing presentations in user groups as well as my own streams. So I really am glad to be involved today. Again, like I said, I've got 5 sessions today that will be streaming live as well as recording. Next one coming up in about an hour. Feel free. And then 3 this afternoon. I'm in US, so it's morning my time. But welcome everybody to the Global Azure events. Go to Global Azure 2022. You can search it on your on your favorite browser, and should be able to find the website with all of the sessions that are going on today, tomorrow, and Saturday as well. So welcome. Welcome to my day, and welcome to Global Azure, and have a great day. Thanks, everybody.